I wanted this video to be done for Christmas, but the combination of an unrelenting work schedule and then comically expensive and time-consuming car repairs ate up my entire December. Also, a little game called Dragon Quest Monsters came out, and despite being one of the best games I've played in recent memory, it's one of the worst games I've played in recent memory. And you should never underestimate how powerful spite is as a motivator. I hate this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and, well, this guy. But I kinda love this guy, maybe because he reminds me of this month's monster. Procrastination is difficult for most of us to overcome at the best of times, let alone when your schedule otherwise is already packed and both mentally and physically exhausting. Things that take a long time aren't always worth the payoff, and the fear of that alone can be enough to immobilize us. Though whether it be art, or work, or even chores, the things that take a while to percolate do actually end up mattering, even if only to ourselves. But that can be enough. And sometimes it takes a long time for a monster to rise through the ranks to be seen as a competitive threat, even though it was right under our noses the whole time. That's an embarrassingly tenuous connection, but what do you want? Not everything can be the mono intro. It's not like I have a bunch of those ready to fire off.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
Jill is a cool guy, and I love him. He's like Dragon if Dragon didn't hit the roids quite as hard. Good power and intelligence, along with decent defensive stats and a solid lifespan, make him a pretty foolproof monster to raise casually. 16 guts rate is on the slow side, but it's not beyond amelioration, and a good selection of cheap and powerful techs on both the power and intelligence side give him plenty of options. So why until recently was Jill considered low tier? If the techs are good and the guts rate is manageable, the monster is usually solid, right? Jill was significantly weaker before the release of DX, and the common opinion after a while of playing with the 45 guts limit removed was that he was better, but still struggled to get off the ground outside of mixed attacker formats. But as it turns out, DX has much more in store for Jill, and though it's been a theme in Monster Rancher competitive play since its inception, once again it just so happens that there is power in simplicity. Okay, I'm reading this back now, and that's pretty good. Maybe I should have made that the conceit of this video, instead of whatever that intro was. Whatever. I'm not redoing it, it's already January. The strength of Jill's basic techs is entirely context dependent. Who's its opponent? What slots are their powerful techs in? How much time is left in the match? They're either round winning all on their own or force Jill into some really awful situations. Double Slaps has decent damage and accuracy, but what sets it apart from a lot of other slow guts rate basics is its ability to wither. Though unreliable in this sense, a couple of good rolls consecutively can tack on a good chunk of damage and stop the opponent from building an advantage of any kind. Versus fast guts rate monsters and tanks, this can be a bit of a liability, but in heavyweight, which is the traditional Western format of a 3500 stat cap, it helps function late in tournament bracket runs where a lot of the strongest monsters are speedy and hate losing their guts. 1-2 straight is good if your opponent has no threatening techs in slot 3, and it's the most agonizing tech to watch your Jill swing if they do. Since it moves an entire slot back on a hit, 1-2 straight cannot be chained into itself, so it works as a hit and run tech, as long as you don't run straight into something like the brick wall we know as Turn Assault. It's got pretty good numbers, but that wall is something else. Clap Attack's numbers aren't too bad, but it's arguably worse at its job of withering and chip damage than Double Slaps is. This happens a lot in Jill's kit. His worst techs are mostly fine, but just completely outclassed by his other options. Slow guts rate mons don't do well to focus on withering, so this tech sees almost no play. Though I will say in the hard mode mod, withering Jill is an exceptionally powerful build, but that's not really what we're talking about right now. Slap combo is almost on the same curve as Clap Attack for damage and withering to cost, but its big weakness beyond just being the type of tech a mon like Jill doesn't normally want to use is its super lengthy animation time. Being able to wither 30 guts for 27 costs is pretty decent, but it really doesn't matter when it takes 7 seconds to get back into the game. The fastest mons in the game can end up with a plus 20 guts surplus even after the withering once this tech ends. So you have to ask yourself if the 21 force is worth going into a hole like that. Frantic Rush is a tech that I, for a long time, considered to be Jill's worst tech. Through the march of time, it turns out it's a lot more consistent than I initially thought it to be, but its numbers aren't great. It has niche use disrupting the opponent's counterattacks after Jill swings 1-2 straight, but if you're using Frantic Rush, 99% of the time it's because you like the animation. Like, let's not delude ourselves here. Punch Combo is one of Jill's best techs and probably his best power tech. It's really inaccurate, but it's a ton of damage for 29 guts, meaning about 40% of the time you've got a pre-canned game winner on your hands. It's similar to Durahan's Insane Slash combo, though it's not quite as efficient, though to be fair, nothing is. Jill wants to swing this as much as possible against most of his opponents. Jill combo has an enormous 61 force attached to it, and at only 45 guts, you're gonna get your money's worth out of it, when it connects. Minus 10 hit can't be overlooked, but that does mean it's actually more accurate than Punch Combo, and versus tanks there's only a handful of options in the entire game that do their job better than Jill Combo does. On the intelligence side, Jill's got a few more choices to make. Ice Spikes is one of the best techs in the game to roll down with a guts lead. 20 force and plus 9 hit for only 17 guts is really wild, though the 0 withering is at best a mixed blessing. No chance to proc anger on your opponent is nice, but if they're tanky enough to absorb multiple consecutive spikes, Jill is in real trouble once he runs out of guts. Still, this is one of the most cost-efficient hit techs in the entire game, and it covers up double slaps, so it's, necessary for intelligence builds. Cold Breath doesn't see nearly as much play as Ice Spikes, and for some good reasons. About 50% more expensive to do less damage, Cold Breath's all about securing the hit, and doing a bit of withering while you're at it. Plus 17 hit is huge. Very few techs in the game are more accurate than Cold Breath, but the cost means that this is a very niche tech that works best to close out games or as a contingency plan versus low life speedsters. It's definitely a tech that works better in the hands of a player than the AI. Ice Wave, like Spikes, forgoes any withering, and because of this sacrifice, its numbers end up looking really overtuned. It's basically a mini punch combo, and it's arguably Jill's best technique in its entire kit. 19 cost isn't nothing for Jill, but it's a risk he's willing to take to be able to score a hefty chunk of damage quickly. This isn't a competitive thing at all, but I really enjoy that the color of Jill's ice attacks is based on the breed. I'm especially fond of the purple hue that Skullcapped has. Too bad, Skullcapped isn't very good, but what are you gonna do? Ice Meteor is a more well-rounded version of Ice Wave, but it's significantly more expensive because of this. 40% chance to crit with the Bad Natured Stress bonus does mean that you've got a 45 force tech nearly half the time, and the decent withering stops your opponent from running away with the Guts lead if you use this on frame 1 of a fight. Probably not strictly as worth its cost as Ice Wave, but plenty of monsters do work with less. And Jill's final tech is Snowstorm. Snowstorm is an accurate and debilitating round opener that more often than not puts Jill on the front foot coming out of the gates. The damage is fairly weak considering its cost, but it can be seen sort of like Dragon slamming down. The tech is all about doing a chunk of damage at round open and making sure your opponent cannot reciprocate in kind. Jill can set itself up for success with Snowstorm, but the downside is that Jill's opening the game with 50 fewer guts than its opponent when it misses, which is usually the fastest way to lose. Historically, Jill's best format has been lightweight, and he's actually one of the strongest monsters in this entire meta. Picking up Ice Spikes, Ice Wave, and Punch Combo allows for a combination of huge damage and efficiency at a very, very low average guts cost. Picking up Snowstorm allows Jill to disrupt monsters like Phoenix and Golem that are trying to win on frame 1 with their own slot 4 nukes, but it ends up generally hurting Jill in matchups where the opponent can tank a hit and build up their guts quickly, which is pretty common in this format. On the pure power side for non-mixed attacker formats, well, you get Punch Combo. That's all you really need in addition to the basics. You can get Frantic Rush to disrupt Turn Assault plays from Naga, but more often than not, Punch Combo is the light. It's also what leads us to the hero of our story. You see, DX introduced a bunch of special spawns that weren't available in the base game. Some of these are just pop culture references like the Pikachu Hopper, but others are references to some of the unique tournament opponents you can fight in Monster Rancher 2. You can get Akrel and Hamid from the Shrine, and they start with buffed stats and powerful techs, and you can get Bigfoot. Bigfoot is a Wondar that shows up in the bizarre Rank A Phoenix Cup. This is the only opponent Jill you can fight in the entire game outside of Big Hand. And notably, it has a much faster guts rate than normal at 11. The Bigfoot you can get from the Shrine starts with Grit, an 11 guts rate, and Punch Combo. This is the best Jill for competitive play in all scenarios, though, if you wanted access to Power, which it doesn't have for some reason, or Fury, you'd have to go with something else, but those are small prices to pay. And not only is it the best Jill, it comes with the best power build straight out of the box. This means it's the absolute easiest monster to build for competitive play if you're just trying to make something strong. Bigfoot is just good to go as it is. Raise its stats and you're done. And Monster Cheese did exactly that with his Wondar, Son of Lumpy. Here's footage of the original Lumpy getting its ass beat by yours truly.
Oh, he gets real? I didn't know this motherfucker had real! Oh my... No! Oh no!
Son of Lumpy is one of the most consistently powerful mons in the heavyweight division of this year's DX Battle League. No one really expected Jill to be as dominant as it is with such a compact and easy to build loadout, but somehow it slipped by us as a secret top tier for nearly 2 whole years without anyone noticing. Inside jokes in the community have popped up with people repeating, "I think Jill is actually really good," whenever a monster unexpectedly punches above their weight and pulls off an underdog victory. So how did we miss it? I'm a huge fan of Jill. I've built my share for competitive play.
So I think it's a completely fair assessment to say that Nash is the best North American player currently.
What's different about this one? Is punch combo alone enough to make the monster as good as it is? Well, simply put, no. Punch combo is pretty good, but it's not broken, and it's not nearly enough to make Jill a top tier. Jill is still probably a bit stronger than we as a collective community gave it credit for, but Jill didn't change that much. The meta did. Jill, more than most mid-tier monsters, struggled in dramatic fashion versus Naga and Joker, two of the monsters who were subjected to harsh bans and restrictions in this season's DXBL to reel in their immense power. Naga, as previously mentioned, eats Jill alive when it swings 1-2 straight, and Joker is able to slug it out in the first 2 slots in a way that Jill just cannot compete with. With these two relegated to weaker versions of themselves and having a much smaller footprint in competitive play than they previously did, a path was carved out for Jill to succeed in a way it just wasn't able to previously. But Jill is still a solid mon even without the bans. It's definitely stronger than originally thought. It just required a bit of restraint in building to see its true potential. Like the 4-minute mile, we now know what's possible with Jill, and I think it's time languishing the lower mid-tiers are over, no matter who his opponents end up being. Sorry bud, you're not allowed in the low-tier tournaments anymore. Hey guys, thanks for watching another one of these. Super fun. I wanted to get it out in December, obviously, like I said off the hop, but, you know, c'est la vie. I started in tandem streaming to both Twitch and YouTube at the same time, so, you know, if you've only ever watched these and you don't really use Twitch, you can now catch me on YouTube whenever I'm doing my regular streams. The DXBL Season 3 is about 5 weeks away from closing out, so you'll get to catch all of those. And also, you know, I've been playing a lot of Dragon Quest monsters lately. I plan on doing competitive guides and stuff for that as well. So if you like that stuff, you know, feel free to stick around. You can hop into the Discord and learn more about Monster Rancher and DQM. We're always talking about it. Everyone's super willing to help with whatever questions you have. I've got a ton of stuff in store now that, you know, work has slowed down for January, and I'm really excited about the next couple of months. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you soon.